Shackleton was a leader who was made, not born, and he was made in very large part by two previous expeditions that he had made to Antarctica under two different sets of circumstances. The first was at the early turn of the century, the 19th into the 20th century. He, under the command of Robert Falcon Scott, a well-known British naval commander, he and several other men traveled to the Antarctic continent in an attempt to be the first team of men to discover the South Pole. That voyage taught Shackleton a lot about what weak leadership looked like. Scott was weak. He was indecisive. He was insecure. He wanted his men to like him more than he wanted to achieve his mission, which included, very importantly, the safety of his men. So Shackleton learned a lot about what great leadership was not, reminding all of us that we can learn from other individuals as we make ourselves into good leaders, partly by negative example. The second voyage that very much affected the making of Ernest Shackleton was a voyage that he himself captained. It was an amazing journey, and Shackleton and his small team got close to the pole, the closest that any group had ever gotten, 97 miles north, when Shackleton realized that his men were too weak to complete the trip to the South Pole and get back safely. And so he turned away, a wrenching decision. And as he said later to his wife, better a live donkey than a dead lion. So there he learned the critical importance of looking out for the safety of his men and of looking ahead from what would it cost him and his men, even though they'd get to the South Pole, if they never got back. Shackleton's most famous expedition, and the one we're going to concentrate on now, is the Endurance expedition, which began in August 1914 when the team left London for the Antarctic continent. On their way to the Antarctic continent, Shackleton and his men sail into an island for their last outpost. It's called South Georgia, deep in the South Atlantic. The whalers and sailors there warn him that the icebergs are unusually far north this year, and that if he and his men sail south, they may face danger and hazards as a result of a sea that is literally ridden with ice floes. Shackleton makes the decision almost immediately to sail on despite the risk. By January 1915, they can see the Antarctic coast. It's about 80 miles away. And then ice forms around the ship, big bergs form around the ship and lock together like a vice. And the Endurance and its 28 inhabitants is absolutely stuck. And suddenly, everything is very different. And the mission, walk across the Antarctic continent, is now up for grabs. And last but not least, it's summer, the days are long, and the men who were supposed to be setting up base camp and getting ready for this astounding expedition are confronted with endless time and all that might mean.